Young folks, old folks, everybody come to Kids Club and have a lot of fun. Please check your chewing gum and raisins at the door, and we'll tell you Bible stories that you never heard before. Hello, children. I'm Pastor Ted. Get ready. I'm going to read the Bible. You're going to hear a story. Do you see the glowing bird landing? That's a dove. Do you see the big word Pentecost? Say Pentecost. On Pentecost, we remember the coming of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit we symbolize as a dove or a bird landing, and we symbolize the Holy Spirit as fire. So now listen as I read the story of Pentecost in the book of Acts. When the day of Pentecost had come, the apostles were all together in one place. See this painting by the artist El Greco? The apostles. And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like a rush of violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages, as the Spirit gave them ability. What's your language? I bet your language is English. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem. And at this sound the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all those speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear, each of us in our own native language? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs in our own languages. Even us in California could hear them in our language, English, and we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power." And all were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" But others scoffed, said, "Oh, they're just filled with new wine. That means they're drunk." But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and listen to what I say. Indeed, these are not drunk, as you suppose, for it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. Nobody gets drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning, do they? No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel." And now Peter recites what the prophet Joel had said. "In the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my slaves, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show portents in the heaven above, and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and smoky mist. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the Lord's great and glorious day. And then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." Well, that's the end of the story where Peter, through the prophet Joel, is predicting things. But here's what you and I need to know. When the Holy Spirit comes, symbolized as the dove or as the bird dove or the fire, the Holy Spirit comes into your and my heart. And within your heart, we feel the presence of God. That's what happens. Now, take a look at the shamrock and the symbol of God is Father in the heart, God is Son with the cross, and the Holy Spirit is the dove. That's the Trinity. We'll talk about that next week.
Young folks, old folks, everybody come to Kids Club and have a lot of fun. Please check your chewing gum and raisins at the door, and we'll tell you Bible stories that you never heard before. Goodbye, kids.